So today we are going to talk about a few of the properties that you will be learning in 7th grade. On the next clean sheet, you're going to do an overview of the properties where we're going to talk about them and talk about examples in class. So you either want to leave space here or maybe you've already taken the notes and that's perfectly fine. It just depends on what order you're doing things. So the overview of the notes, make sure you leave a space for that. And on this side, you're going to actually write properties of addition. So we're going to start with properties of addition. The learning target is I can understand how to use the properties to solve problems in the future. So we're really going to learn like the basis. We're going to use what we learned in class to kind of put things together, and then we'll have that as a reference for the future. So go ahead and write that down. Don't forget to go back in the front and write down the topic and page numbers and date in your table of contents so that you are keeping track of that and you can have it for the future as a quick reference tool. As we move forward, you should have been given something that looks like this in your work plan. Okay? You are going to cut out in the middle. Remember you're going to cut on the dotted lines, and then you're going to fold on the solid lines. So you should end up with something like this because you've cut out all the way around in the center. And then there were little dotted line boxes in the corners here that you want to cut all the way around, because then you're going to use those and match them up with the correct property and glue them on the inside. So I'm going to give you a few seconds. Go ahead and pause the video to cut everything out. And then you'll have your pieces when you come back and we can talk about what you're supposed to do with them. Okay, so I'm assuming that you have everything cut out. What you're going to try to do is take each of the little boxes that you cut out here and you're going to glue them on the inside. I don't want to show you which one's which at this point, but you're going to go ahead and glue them on the inside of the term you think matches the definition. So pause the video yet again. You're going to match up which ones you think. I wouldn't necessarily glue them yet because if you're wrong, you're going to want to switch them around. So go ahead and match up what you think is true, and then we'll go over it. Okay, so I'm hoping that you have an idea of what you think each definition goes with. So we're just going to kind of go over them. Commutative property is two or more numbers that can be added in any order without changing the sum. So we can switch out the order of the numbers. So 3 plus 5 is the same thing, or has the same sum as 5 plus 3. They both equal 8. Associative property. For all real numbers A, B, and C, the sum is always the same regardless of the grouping. So grouping is your key word for this one, because remember with associative property, all that happens is that we regroup. The parentheses move. Okay, we're gonna put some examples in here, but I just want to go over the definitions first. Additive inverse. Two numbers added together that are opposites and therefore cancel each other out, resulting in 0. So we're thinking about, our 0 pairs are examples of additive inverses. So we have 3 plus negative 3, that equals 0. Those are additive inverses. Or if you add 4 and then subtract 4, that's an additive inverse. It ends up in 0. And then lastly, we have an additive property of 0, and the sum of 0 and any number that's, the sum of 0 and any number is that number. So if I add 14 and 0, it's always going to give me 14. So whatever number you're adding to 0, that is the sum. Okay, so at this point, I want you to go ahead and draw a large X, okay, across your box. So you're going to do a diagonal here. Try to slow down and make it as neat as you possibly can. And then we're going to draw the diagonal going this way. We're going to have some nice little sections here that we're going to write our examples. So let's start with this one. This is for all real numbers A, B, and C. The sum is always going to be regardless of the grouping, which is associative property. An example of that could be 9 plus 5 plus 4 equals the same thing as 9 plus 5 plus 4. All I did was move my parentheses. Each term that I have in here, 9, 5, and 4, 9, 5, and 4. The terms do not change order. Only what's being grouped changes. So the parentheses move. That's it. Another example could be 31 plus 17 plus 2 is the same thing as 31 plus 17 plus 2. Okay, again, 31, 17, 2, 31, 17, 2. The number order did not change. All that changed is what we grouped together. And again, this is all addition because we're talking about properties of addition. All right, let's move on. Let's look at commutative property. Commutative property states that two or more numbers can be added in any order without changing the sum. So we could say 17 plus 9 equals the same thing as 9 plus 17. Or we could say negative 6 plus 3 equals the same thing as 3 plus negative 6. Those are exactly the same thing. So in terms of a definition, if we used two real numbers for A and B, we could say A plus B equals the same thing as B plus A. Remember, these variables are just letters that represent a number. So it can be any number. If you're adding A plus B, it's the same thing as adding B plus A. Okay? Let's now move to additive inverse. So additive inverse is two numbers added together that are opposites and therefore cancel each other out, resulting in 0. So we could say negative 9 plus 9, that equals 0. We could say 17 plus negative 17, that equals 0. We have 5 plus negative 5, that equals 0. We could say 22 plus negative 22, that also equals 0. Okay, so any number plus its opposite is going to equal 0. And then the last one, any number plus 0 is going to be that number. So we have 6 plus 0 equals 6. We have 0 plus 25 equals 25. Negative 3 plus 0 equals negative 3. Anything plus 0 is just going to end up being that number. Okay, at this point, let's go ahead and glue this on. So let's turn it over, and you're going to use your glue stick and put glue all over just the rectangular portion. You're going to flip it over, and right underneath your learning target, you want to just glue that in. Okay? Then you can fold your flaps in and have a nice little foldable that you can refer to. Okay? Underneath, we're going to take just a couple of notes to kind of help you remember the important parts. So, first of all, the whole reason we learn properties is because understanding the properties of numbers will help you to do mental math. So knowing that anything plus 0 is just going to be that number helps me to quickly do mental math if I'm given a problem with that kind of situation. I'm going to scoot this up just a little bit. The other two notes that I want you to take are things that help you remember the differences between properties. So we're going to start with commutative. Okay, commuters go, if we're commuting to and from work, we go to and from work. So commuters, there's a little R in there. Commuters go back and forth each day to work or school. So, in thinking about how that applies to the commutative property, we have 6 plus 5 and then 5 plus 6. So they go to and they go from. They're switching order. Switch order. of numbers. So again, that does not change the answer. The other one that I wanted to briefly touch on was the associative property. Okay, and just remembering the difference between the two because they're very easy to confuse. So think of your friends that you hang out with all the time. They are your associates, okay? So I could be friends with two other people. Say I'm friends with Lindsay and Liz, okay? Me and Liz could go do something and hang out and have a good time. And then I could also go with Lindsay and go and hang out and have a good time. So we could have different groups because we're all associates. So we can group up in different ways, okay? So think of your friends. Because they're your associates. And I'm just going to draw a little illustration down here. So you could have, let's say this is Joe, okay? You and Joe could go do something. So say Joe's busy that day, but you and someone else, let's say you and, I don't know, Lindsay. So you guys could go hang out. Or say Lindsay's busy, okay? And you and Joe could hang out. So Joe is here. So you guys can hang out in different ways, is all this is saying. Just to try to help you remember. So Lindsay's hanging out by herself today because her mom's making her go to her grandma's house or something. Okay? So just another way to think about it. You can group up with your friends and go do things differently. That's associative property. You guys are all associates. You're all friends, but you may not all hang out at the same time all the time. You might do different things in different groups of people. So hopefully this has helped you learn a little bit more about the properties or learn different ways that you can remember some things. And remember, you can always use this as a reference. So come back to it anytime you need to.